The biggest police force in the world, the NYPD, the recipients of a lot of criticism, have a fun new problem. The disciplinary records of NYPD officers just keep mysteriously disappearing from the website that allows the public to track their misconduct, which is something that of course has raised serious questions about police accountability, legal compliance, and even potential efforts to obscure wrongdoing. And this especially because the website was literally created following pressure from the George Floyd protests to increase transparency and accountability. And all of this got revealed in this wild ProPublica report. As the website in question was built after New York state lawmakers repealed a state statute in 2020 that had banned personnel information about officers from being released. And that move was widely applauded by civil rights advocates who had long argued that the law effectively allowed police to hide misconduct records from the public for decades, which was making the state a national outlier. And you even had the NYPD themselves patting themselves on the back when they complied with the statute's reversal and published a searchable database of uniformed officers early the next year, all of which gave the public the ability to search for certain cops and see information about their training histories, departmental awards, and internal discipline records, with NYPD brass even touting the website's launch in an agency-wide memo claiming that the move was a, quote, step that increases transparency and improves accountability. But now we have this ProPublica investigation revealing that the database championed by NYPD is shockingly unreliable, with them reporting that disciplinary cases against officers frequently vanish from the site for days, sometimes weeks at a time. And it's not like we're talking about some small blip in the system that was quickly resolved after the initial launch. In fact, when the website was first launched, access to these cases stayed relatively steady, and that's according to 1,000 daily snapshots of the database's contents that ProPublica analyzed. But since the fall of 2022, the number of discipline cases that are accessible to the public, they have repeatedly disappeared, and the number of publicly accessible cases fluctuates often and wildly. And sometimes when an officer is searched, the website will literally issue a message that says the officer does not have any applicable entries. And key thing, that's even if they do in fact have a disciplinary record. Now, notably here, it is possible that some of the missing cases involving former officers may have been removed over time because the database is only meant to show misconduct records for active officers. But even then, you had ProPublica saying that those would only explain a fraction of the missing cases. And also, the most concerning part about all this is the sheer number of misconduct records it's impacted. Right? I mean, since May of 2021, just 2 months after the database was launched, almost 90% of the disciplinary cases that had appeared on the NYPD site had gone missing at some point. And while some were ultimately restored at a later date, the issue still persists. Hell, even the same week ProPublica published this story, they found that more than half of the cases that had been in the system at one point were missing. And beyond that, this investigation is also super significant because this issue doesn't just impact low-ranking officers. We're talking about something that goes all the way to the top, with ProPublica finding that, quote, the issue affects nearly all of the officers in the database, with discipline disappearing from the profiles of patrol officers all the way up to its most senior uniformed officer. And this notably including Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry, who's the force's highest-ranking uniformed officer. And that's in addition to 6 deputy chiefs who have assignments that include the NYPD's Transit Bureau and Joint Terrorism Task Force. And the range of the allegations against these high-ranking officers include being discourteous to a suspect, drinking while on duty, improper use of department property, and wrongful searches, frisks, and use of force. And specifically in the case of Madry, he was actually docked 45 vacation days over an incident. Right? One where he'd obstructed internal affairs officials who were looking into an altercation between a fellow officer and an ex-lover that ended with the officer brandishing a gun at Madry. But just days before ProPublica published his investigation, the NYPD system reported no disciplinary cases against the top official. Which is why with all this, you have experts saying the investigation has brought up some super serious concerns. With, for example, Lupe Aguirre, a senior staff attorney at the New York Civil Liberties Union, saying it just continues to undermine the public confidence in that they care at all about discipline and police accountability. Their track record shows that they are both unwilling and unable to hold their officers accountable. And then going on to argue that the NYPD just can't be trusted with the disclosure of officer discipline records because it is a long track record of resisting oversight, especially and specifically when it comes to data. For example, back in 2012, New York City passed a landmark open data law requiring government agencies to publish a wide range of information on the citywide portal, which is called Open Data. And experts say that with the statewide reversal of the police secrecy law in 2020, the NYPD is now required to post all of their officer data, including misconduct records, on Open Data. In fact, an official schedule of releases shows that the NYPD's officer profile data was actually supposed to be added to the website by the end of last year. But the agency, wouldn't you know it, still failed to upload that data. And all this is despite literally being required by law to publish their records on Open Data, the police department chose a third-party vendor to run their site, with that vendor, Rock Daisy, being best known for selling athlete management software for sports teams. And so, I mean, all of this, it's super sketchy for a few reasons. First of all, why would they hire a potentially unqualified vendor and risk issues with the platform when they already have a perfectly good government website that they're supposed to be using anyway? That is, unless, and this is a complete hypothetical, they want to use a glitchy website that made misconduct records disappear for some reason. And secondly, there's also some serious sketchiness with the NYPD's connections to the company, with ProPublica finding that the source code from the officer profile website shows that it runs on Rock Daisy's software. And that also seemingly being backed up by a blog post on the company's site that said that its software had been licensed to several professional sports teams and, quote, the world's largest police department, which, seems to be a clear reference to the NYPD. But notably, that blog post, which is also linked in ProPublica's report, when we went to check it out, what do you know it, that page just happened to be taken down. Also with this, a spokesperson for the New York City agency that audits departments, spending, and reviews city contracts told the outlet that her office couldn't locate any contracts with Rock Daisy or payments made to the company. But even that is not where the sketchiness ends, because the NYPD also refused to respond to ProPublica's repeated requests for comment and has failed to make any kind of public response addressing this very serious situation as of recording. In fact, instead of tamping down concerns about accountability and transparency, they're taking secret steps to make future oversight even more difficult. Just weeks after ProPublica revealed these very alarming issues, the NYPD quietly restored over 2,000 discipline records that had previously just gone, oh, whoops, missing, which then resulted in the outlet publishing another article reporting that a little more than a week after their reporters reached out to the NYPD for comment, the department just so happened to begin a massive restoration. And then a few weeks after the first article came out, the agency did a full update of the website, an update that notably scrubbed all references of Rock Daisy from the site's source code. And at this point, you might be thinking, well, okay, they're being weird about it, but at least they put the disciplinary records back. Well, no, because in the revamp of the site, the NYPD also removed case numbers from the disciplinary data, which is a move that ProPublica says will make it more difficult for the public to identify or track missing cases. And also noting that since the site revamp, the surge in restored cases has begun to drop again. So of course, as a result, you have experts still concerned that the database is so inconsistent and that the NYPD only discloses a small subset of these cases. With Girardier explaining, the fluctuation in the data is still concerning and reflects a continued pattern of secrecy in how the department handles disciplinary matters. New Yorkers deserve full transparency into the NYPD's internal accountability systems, especially given the department's culture of impunity. But still, even with this latest report, the NYPD has remained totally silent and refused to address any of this, which of course, funny enough, makes it seem even more like they're hiding something, even if they weren't. So I'm also not saying that they're not hiding something.